with those new terms, I'll just I guess explain the same scenario. A first blush, you're saying that your understanding or your brain or whatever the thing is capable of misinterpreting information it receives, and the only way to remedy that is.
Are you talking about that I get data that isn't actually representative of what's actually in the
No,
world?
I'm saying you're
Or that
getting
I
data.
misinterpret
You misinterpret. You're looking at the
some data that I
stars.
get.
You're looking at the stars, and you think that the Earth is fixed, and the stars go around.
Yeah. So misinterpretation of the data.
Yes.
Which can be remedied by getting more data.
Yes.
Which contradicts that initial misinterpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you see the kind of contradiction there? Like you're admitting that the muscle that you have for interpreting data both admits of being faulty and is its own corrector. Now,
yeah, but it only ever gets better,
According to who? How do you know?
Because it systematically rules things out because they no longer fit the data.
But you've already admitted that thing could failed the first time.
It failed the first time because it didn't fail. It had no way of knowing that it could have failed.
It misinterpreted.
That's not entirely
data,
true
so
because
failed.
people are dumb. And people can actually poorly interpret things and actually had access to information that should have contradicted their interpretation. So this argument is different if I'm stupid. Okay?
Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about you looking at the stars.
And as far as I can, or I'm just born, I just appear on Earth and I look and I see that it's flat,
Yeah.
Waking up on Earth for the first time and perceiving it to be flat, you're wrong, but it's not your fault.
Right. Correct.
It's not your fault until you go into space and look down and see that it's not, or make observations about the circumference of the Earth like they did.
Don't bring the morals into it. There's no one's at fault. I'm just saying that there's.
Oh, I'm not saying being wrong is immoral to begin with.
Okay. I was interested in the distinction you were making.
You haven't poorly interpreted the data until you have data that's contradictory to that interpretation.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You need to see the dots forming a trend line before you can be at fault for not seeing the trend line.
So you're saying, given the data that you had, you actually interpreted well. It's just that you didn't have enough data.
You interpreted it as best as you possibly could have.
Yeah.
In order to get to the better interpretation, you needed data that you didn't have access to.
Okay. So, I'll just, given the new terms, I'll just restate the argument again. You have you have an instrument of understanding that can understand the world, and it can misinterpret reality, not in that it makes a mistake given the data. It
can do that too, but
right. But let's just go with there is such a state that it doesn't have all the data points to where it can see everything.
Ignorance
is a condition that's conceivable.
Yeah, and you will never be entirely without ignorance.
Yeah,
but you will constantly be gaining more information, and ignorance will depart from zero.
Okay, now I have to ask you, because that's a bold claim. So you just made the claim that we will always be advancing in knowledge because you're always receiving more information.
That's not actually true. Like human civilization can collapse. Like if you look at human civilization as a whole as collecting information.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that, but let's just say you in your life.
That's conditional. We could fail. But as a person,
yes,
you're always gaining more information.
You're receiving more. Yeah, no, I can see that.
Unless you get Alzheimer's or something and you start losing it.
Yeah, I'm not going to make
unless there's damage to your brain. Outside of that,
yeah, I'm not going to make those silly arguments. But
yes, you're constantly gathering more information. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So where?
But you can also gather information that's misleading. Like if you only gather certain types of information, if you're not getting a random sample. You could get information that leads you on a certain path. Yeah.
Sure. So you claim that because you're gathering more information, that your interpretation, if you do a faithful interpretation, will be more and more accurate, a more and more accurate mapping of reality. Correct. Let's say for
not exactly
it's gonna approximate it. I mean, I'm not making a difficult argument here. And if you're
like what I'm saying is you could continue to there is such a thing as non-systematic sampling. or
Okay.
like systematic sampling, where you constantly get information that supports a bad claim, you think that the world doesn't exist beyond these mountains, but you never attempt to go beyond the mountains to see. You just keep on walking within the mountains. Then you keep getting data, but none of the data actually challenges your claim. And that data is out there, you're just not going to access it.
Okay.
Right? So gathering more information is not necessarily going to bring you closer to the truth. It can start to put a finger on the scale towards what's familiar and make you say and mislead you and get you to wrong conclusions because it seems like the data supports that when it doesn't.
Okay. What's that process called of like the feedback loop of self bias confirmation? Something like that?
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation
I guess.
bias. All right. How do you? All right.
like-
Then let's go with that. How do you solve for confirmation bias? How do you like remedy that?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is remain open to information. Like don't select the data that you're gathering with intent to confirm something. You have to pursue data without prejudice, basically, as best you can. If you have an option and you know that option is gonna put a finger on the scale in terms of the data, and you have an alternative that you know isn't going to do that, you have to take the alternative that isn't going to do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're sabotaging yourself and your ability to accurately understand the world. That's the first thing. The second thing is confer with the other brains to have access to their data as well. Of course, they can lie and they can also be wrong. And instead of giving you the raw data, they can give you their interpretation of the data, which is subject to the same things. To the same.
But I will note.
But these are just heuristics.
Yeah.
There's no algorithm. There's
I will
no
note.
way to guarantee.
I will
that you
note
do it
that both of your solutions for confirmation bias involve receiving more information, right?
Yeah.
And laying that information before an unbiased, as best as you can, because that's difficult, but still an unbiased interpretator, brain, whatever.
Yeah. Gather information as broadly as you can.
So if we do that, if we're very scrupulous about limiting our biases and also multiplying the brains that are looking at the same thing from different angles so that we can kind of have this collective perception of something which is going to,
to cover each other's shortcomings.
Yeah, exactly. Cover our blind spots. Then, under those conditions, given more information, we will closer and closer, even if it's very small, by small increments, we will come to a better understanding of reality.
We can draw better lines that fit the data.
Yes,
And
we can fit the data. Yeah. Oh, actually, that's interesting.
But all we can ever do is fit the data. Any data that's not part of this isn't, it can't be factored in.
What do you mean by fit the data? Is it just like data or like the actual world?
I'm saying that this is only a strategy for understanding the natural world. Yes.
Okay.
This isn't a strategy for understanding something.
Let me just rush to my point, because we can just keep on talking about different scenarios or whatever. But you know my point, and you keep on avoiding it.
I'm answering your questions.
What's that?
I'm not driving this further. I've been pretty responsive this time. I haven't been.
All right.
Pushing forward on my own.
All right. Well, I'll ask to let's leave all the different like conditionals and confirmation biases. Like that's just besides the point. Like we're just talking about.
What's your point then?
The point is, you're. It seems like, okay, you're making the claim that there will be a steady march of human knowledge that will actually map onto reality, and it's going to get closer and closer to reality. What authority tells you that? How do you know that it's actually approaching reality, and we're not just like deceived into thinking that we're approaching something when we're in reality it's just.
You're suggesting that there's a possibility that our ability to land a rocket on the moon is a mistake on our part, like that we haven't actually gained deeper understanding of the physics, like somehow we've been deceived into thinking that we can do things that we could never do before?
It's more like the brain in the vat situation, which we're not. Which I just want to allude to that as like a. How do we know that this whole thing isn't a?
Again, all we're doing is fitting the data.
I think that's where you're most right, because that's all we can do. But you I don't think that you believe that we're just fitting the data. I think you think that we're actually doing something real. We're not just brains in a vat.
That's the point. Like, if we are brains in a vat, and and all the data that we're being fed is inaccurate data, it's been selected for us by an outside power.
Yeah.
Then we have zero access to real data, and we can't map reality. You know?
Yes, exactly.
There is no alternative. Like, all we can do is map the data that we have, and if our world is the real one, then great. And if our world isn't the real one, fucking go jump off a cliff then, and see if it doesn't hurt when you fall. You know, it doesn't.
That's exactly. Yeah. Okay. That.
You know, who cares if my suffering isn't actually being felt by me 3 levels up, you know, whatever. If I'm just an avatar for something else, my suffering seems real to me, so who gives a fuck?